Hey everyone, Steve from Backcountry Gallery here, and this time around we're going to do the initial specifications review for that new 500PF. I've had a lot of emails, a lot of people asking me about this lens. I think even more so than the Z6 and Z7 cameras because I have a lot of wildlife photographers that follow me. So we're all very excited, very curious about this lens. We're going to take a look at the new specifications, kind of get an idea. I'll tell you what I think about the lens and we'll go from there. Just so you know, I will be buying one of these and I will be doing a full field report, so we're going to have everything there. This is just kind of the preview before I've had the lens in my hands. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing is size and weight. Now the great thing about these PF lenses is that they are significantly smaller and lighter than their larger counterparts. In this case, this lens is only 3.2 pounds. If you compare it to a 200 to 500, that's 5 pounds. A 500 f4 is 6.8 pounds, so that's significantly lighter. Now the diameter is 4.2 inches. That's the same as a 200 to 500. I just so happen to have my 200 to 500 right here to give you an idea of that front diameter right there. And the 500 f4 is 5.5 inches, so quite a bit larger. Now the lens itself, this is what's really exciting, is only 9.3 inches long. That's 1.2 inches shorter than this 200 to 500. So just kind of hack that off there, and that's where you have 500 millimeter. With this lens, 500 millimeters out here. So that's pretty cool. The 500 f4 by comparison is 15.2 inches. Now the other thing though, if you look at the photo that we have here up on your screen, you can see that this lens is wider at the front and it kind of tapers down. Now if you look at the 200 to 500, you can see it's pretty straight down the barrel there. So the thing is, I believe that this lens is going to be even better for hand holding than what we have with the 200 500. Certainly the weight's going to help. So size wise, this looks really, really good. AF speed is the next thing I want to talk about. Now, I believe this should be as fast as the 300PF. When looking over the press release, it seems like Nikon seems to indicate that this is, they talk about how fast it is and how they've used special elements in the AF mechanism to make it even lighter and quicker for the AF motors to move the AF elements around. So I don't know. It should, I would assume, be as fast as the 300PF. I'm thinking it's probably going to be maybe even a touch faster, but I don't know. Now, one thing though, a lot of people, if you have a 200 or 500, you might say, hey, I'm using that lens, and when I'm tracking a bird, the 200 500 is fine, and it is. It is. So why do you need the faster speed? Now, the reason I like faster AF speed with my lenses isn't so much once I lock on, because once you lock on, the camera helps you out, doesn't it? If you're using group AF or dynamic AF or even single point can help you out in some ways with the tracking and stuff. Once the camera locks on, you have a lot of helpers in the AF system to keep that lock, to maintain that lock. The problem is getting that initial AF lock. And the faster the lens is, the quicker it gets onto the subject and the quicker you have all those other helpers inside the camera. To me, that's the biggest downside of the 200 to 500 slower AF speed. It's not so much that I'm having a hard time tracking once I'm locked on. It's that it takes a little bit too long sometimes to get that initial lock, and sometimes you never get it and you miss the shot. So hopefully this lens will alleviate that. We'll see. Next we have the feature set, and what's really cool with this lens is it looks like it has all the great features you find on the more expensive exotic primes. Now there's a lot of switches and buttons and stuff on this lens, and I cover all of those very, very thoroughly in my Nikon Autofocus book, along with a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm going to briefly go over them here, but if you'd like detailed information on how to use these and leverage them, make sure you check out that book. But anyhow, this has the AM, MA, and M switches for focus adjustment. The difference between AM and MA is basically how sensitive the focus ring is to manual input when you're actively autofocusing. I usually recommend people leave it on AM if autofocus is your primary means of focusing. It's got an AF limiter on it, which is good. 8 meters to infinity is where the limiter kicks in, which is pretty typical. It has both normal and sport VR. I find sport VR works a little bit better. I'm glad to see it on there, at least for what I do. I find I can keep the AF point on the area of my subject I want a little bit more accurately with sport VR. And it also has some function buttons and memory recall. And to me, this is the big one. This is the stuff that you don't find on the mid-grade glass like the 200 to 500. This is the stuff that you find on like 600 f4s. Now, if you're not familiar with these function buttons, they can do a whole lot of things depending on how you configure them. For one, you can actually configure them through your camera. You can switch it to, I believe, AE lock, and then you can actually configure that button, that switch, that option. So these function buttons do all sorts of things. You can even do things like press the function button to change from single point to group AF depending on the camera body that you're using. So it's really cool. The one feature that I use here though is pretty much the default one, which is the memory recall feature. And the reason I like the memory recall feature in these lenses is that what it does is I can focus at a certain distance and I could press that little button. It's a little button right next to on the barrel of the lens, right next to the grip. It says memory set right there, and it'll lock in that focus distance. So anytime I press those function buttons on the barrel of the lens will automatically jump right back to that pre-assigned focus distance. Now, I think the original intent with this was probably like for photographers doing sports, like maybe you're shooting a baseball game and you want to have AF focused right on home plate, but in the meantime, you also want to be out in the, out poking around the field with the lens and taking pictures of the players. And maybe someone's starting to slide in, you can just press that focus button real quick and boom, your focus is set right back on home plate. And that's what this does. It's very, very cool. I personally use it for wildlife. A lot of times if I'm doing flying birds, maybe I have hummingbirds and they're buzzing around a tree with a lot of flowers on it, I'll kind of set that distance in so that when the camera starts hunting and the lens starts hunting, I can just press that function button and get it back in the ballpark close enough that I can then go ahead, hit the AF on button and lock right onto that hummingbird. So I find those memory recall functions very, very handy, and I'm really glad to see them on this lens. Construction looks really good. It uses the phase Fresnel lens, which is really cool. It basically foreshortens the light waves so that you can get away with having a physically smaller lens, delivering you the same magnification you would get with like a typical 500 millimeter. It is weather sealed and to a much greater extent than something like a 200 to 500. This has very serious weather sealing on it. And it even has that coating on the front element that kind of acts like Rain-X for your lens so that when droplets of water hit it, they just run right off. That's really nice, especially if you use it in misty or rainy conditions like I often do with my wildlife work. And I'm confident it's going to be similar build quality to what we have with like a 300PF, so it should be very good. Image quality looks pretty good according to the MTF charts anyway. It should be on par with the 300PF. Nikon claims that the materials used effectively control the PF lens flare problem, if you want to call it that. Now, just for the record on that, I have a 300PF. I've been using it a long time, ever since it came out, and I have yet to have weird flare because of the PF element in that lens. And looking at the press release and reading through it, Nikon seems like they've even improved on that with this lens. So I think they solved a problem that wasn't really there, made it even better. So if you're worried about weird flare with the PF lenses, I'd say just dismiss that idea. It's not been, from a practical field standpoint, it's not been an issue for me. Nikon also claims, I saw this in their press release, I thought it was kind of interesting, they claim optical performance not compromised with a 1.4 TC3. Now, I don't know if that means it's just typical for a teleconverter or if it's like, hey, you can't see any difference between them. I'm not sure exactly, what's going on there, but it'll be interesting to test that out and find out. Anyhow, if you can take a look at the MTF charts here, and you can see that it's definitely a step above the 200 to 500 at 500 millimeter, and it's right on par with a 500 f4. So, I mean, that's looking pretty good. Some final thoughts here. I think for $3,600, it looks pretty good to me. The only downside is that it is an f5.6 lens, and before you jump to the comments and crucify me for saying that, I am a fan of fast glass. As a matter of fact, I did a whole article on it, and the reasons I like fast glass will actually surprise you. They're not exactly what a lot of people think. So I'll put a card, I think it goes up there. I'll put a card in the video. Go ahead over to my site, read that article, and I think you'll find some surprises in there why I like fast glass. Now, that said, I do understand the physics of it. I do understand how much larger the front of this lens would have to be, and I don't even know if you could actually pull it off successfully with what Nikon's doing to make this a 500 f4. And of course, it would be 4 or 5 times as expensive. It would be ridiculous. I understand all of that, perfectly clear. So don't kill me in the comments on this. But there are times you do want a little bit faster than 5.6, but I think that on the balance, when you consider that it's, roughly a third of the price of an exotic prime, that it's super lightweight, super easy to transport, super easy to carry, it's going to be super easy to handhold because of all that, there is a lot of upside to it. One of the things, in fact, that I really like about these PF lenses is that they're so small and lightweight, it makes it very easy to stalk through the woods and through heavy brush and that. You don't have to have a tripod with you. You can get in there, and the big front element of the 600 f4, the 500 f4 isn't, glaring and intimidating the animal. I swear sometimes the animals run because they see that big, huge piece of glass there. So there are some real advantages, and I will definitely be using this lens for my professional work in the field. There's no question about it. So, like I say, I would prefer, I will still favor, let me put it this way, I will still favor faster optics, but this is definitely coming along with me on my trips. And again, I will be testing this out. I will be doing a full field test on this once I get back from Costa Rica. So if nothing else, when I get back, we'll probably do some sharpness tests real quick, but there will be a full field test for you and a full review, and we'll go from there. But so that about does it. So if you've enjoyed this video, make sure you give it the old thumbs up and like and subscribe and, you know, do all that stuff, make comments. And also stop by my site, check out my ebook, Secrets to the Nikon Autofocus System and Secrets to Stunning Wildlife Photography. We have thousands and thousands of photographers who've downloaded those books and are using the techniques out in the field each and every day. They're loaded with information. You're going to love them. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.